Yes. All right. First of all, thank you everyone for joining the first collaboration between Atidna and Head On for our first Zoom session dialogue. This will be a series of conversations that we platform between Israelis and Palestinians. And the topic of conversation for today is how do we unite our two peoples? What can we do to bring our two peoples together? Atidna is an organization that is dedicated to these conversations. We focus primarily on college campuses to unite Jews and Palestinians for dialogue, for peace events, and to solidify that we are one family and not inherent enemies. We are on 15 American college campuses. We're always looking to expand. Jad is actually my vice president. He leads our UT Austin chapter, and I will be the moderator for today's conversation. But before I go any further, we have some sponsors that I want Beata to share with everyone who made this conversation possible. Beata, take it away. All right.
Viara, you're on mute, by the way.
Yeah, that's why we can't hear you.
Wow, I feel technologically inept on that
There you
one.
go.
All right. We're grateful so we have three people who helped promote this event, three organizations. First, we're grateful to Unity is Strength for helping bring cross-party conversations on Israel and Palestine to more than 20 million views and numerous joint projects. They're primarily a Quora thread, so it's very interesting. They're a very lively Quora thread, so if you're interested, check them out. Then we're also grateful to the Palestinian Israel Journal, and they're the only Israeli and Palestinian publication based in East Jerusalem. Since the war began, they have maintained an ongoing daily dialogue between the 15 Israeli and 15 Palestinian members of their editorial board. They believe it's absolutely essential to work together for an end to the conflict based upon a two-state solution for the sake of both peoples. And the last organization we have to thank is Standing Together, and they're the largest grassroots movement mobilizing Jewish and Palestinian citizens of Israel against the occupation for peace, equality, and social justice. For the past 2 years, people from around the world opened local groups of supporters of the movement, some trying to mirror the organization, having Palestinian and Israeli members and leaders, and the groups put efforts in advocating for peace through events, protests, and dialogue in their cities and communities. Back to you, Elijah.
Very nice. So before we get any further, I want to explain the moderation style for today's conversation. I will be the sole moderator, and my purpose as a moderator is to be very hands-off. I'm not going to police what you say. People typically ask, can I make generalizations? Can I do I statements? For sure, right? If you say something problematic in my eyes and the eyes of Atidna, it's best for someone in the conversation to check you rather than I have preset guidelines saying you can't say X, Y, and Z. And so you are free to say whatever you want. And while we have a specific topic, that topic is what can we do to unite Jews and Palestinians in this moment? We don't have to end on that topic. Whatever direction you, as the participants, want to steer the conversation is, we can do that. If it ends up being a debate, that's 100% okay. If it ends up being a civil platform to exchange ideas, that's also okay. Whatever direction you all make it will be fine. I also have to mention this conversation is being recorded. If you do not want to appear in the recording afterwards, send me a message. I am very happy to black you out or remove you. Or if you're uncomfortable when you're on screen right now, you can remove your image and basically we can also handle the audio after the fact. But besides that, my role as a moderator will simply be to call on you, the participants. It's to make sure not one demographic is dominating the conversation. So after a Palestinian speaks, I'll pass it off to a Jewish/Israeli participant, back and forth, basically. And without further ado, I want to open the floor to our participants. The way you will open yourself up to be called upon, what Tal's doing right now, just raise your hand and I will call on you. I will try and go in the order that's roughly set in the text box that I'm seeing, and calling the person who's on top. But I want to leave it to Tal to start us off since he's had his hand up for a little while. But after Tal's finished speaking, there's no time limits unless you go beyond 4 minutes. Then I will call in a Palestinian after you. So Tal, take us away.
All right. Should I introduce myself? How do you want me to kick things off?
That's a great, yeah, sorry. Before we go any further, I think introductions would actually be great. So let's let everyone introduce themselves in the participant lounge, and then we will get started with the actual conversation. Tal, why don't you start us off?
Hi, I'm Tal. I'm an Israeli American Jew. I have a strange My family came here from Israel for a business opportunity in 2000 and it hasn't left since. I've had a very privileged experience here. I've learned a lot about this conflict, mostly due to my eyes being opened about certain things in regards to it. What's the noise coming from the background? I can't.
That might be from me. I'll mute myself.
Alrighty.
Well, well, that's most unfortunate.
Oh my goodness. What am I overhearing? But I think something I wanted to bring up, and I'm going to try and say this without being without sounding rude or anything, is the issue. Why is there noise? There's noise coming from a certain user.
If you're
I
not speaking, you mute yourself if you can.
Smart strategy, isn't it, to my problems?
I only see it coming from
I'm seeing it coming from Tal. It's coming from you. Are you running
oh,
something in the background?
It's a lot out of book.
Oh wait, apparently it was. Thank you for catching that. I didn't realize something was playing from my computer screen.
You're all good, man.
All right. But something I wanted to start things off with is how have how have y'all reckoned with culture with things like cultural identity over the years? Because I've found myself struggling with that as of very recently, just trying to find a healthy balance between my critiques of the Israeli government and whatever pleasure I can find in parts of Israeli Jewish culture. So I'm curious as to what people's respective experiences are with that.
Thank you, Tal. Thank you. And we'll try to get that in the conversation. I'm going to pass it on to Jad next to introduce himself. And Jad, try and keep it around a minute if you can.
I'll keep this very brief. My name is Jad. I'm Palestinian American. I'm the vice president of Atidna, Atidna International. I'm the president of the UT Austin chapter of Atidna, where I go to school. That's really it when it comes to my background. I was born and raised in the U.S., but my family's Palestinian, and I'm happy to be here. So, yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you, man. All right, Adam Becker. I want you to go next, and we'll do Adam the Palestinian.
Nice, thanks. Elijah, thank you for doing this. I was born and raised in Israel. I moved to the US when I was 16, and then the day after the war started, I moved back to Israel for about 7 months. And it was during that time that I started taking more seriously the project of having as many conversations as possible and helping to create spaces for conversation to take place. And yeah, happy to be here.
Thank you, Aki. All right, Adam Karam, you are up next, my friend.
Hey everyone, my name is Adam Karam. I am Palestinian American. I live in the US, but my family is Palestinian. We hail from a village called Malha. So, if those in Israel are probably familiar with that, it's where one of the soccer stadiums is, and I think where the Jerusalem Zoo is. So, kind of on the west side. And I'm happy to be here as well and get this dialogue kicked off.
All right, beautiful. Aveva, if you can do us the honor, please introduce yourself.
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Aviva. I'm Ethiopian Israeli. Was born in Israel, moved to the US 3 years ago. I would say that I've got more and more into the conflict subject and issue in the last 3 years, definitely. Um, Diving in, trying to understand more and talk about it more and change opinions and hopefully help in a way. So yeah,
Beautiful.
that's me.
Thank you. Thank you. Abdul Halim, how about you take it off, man?
Hey everybody, my name is Abdul Halim, Abdul Rahman. You guys can call me either Abdel or Abid for short, whichever one is easier for you guys. I'm the host and founder of the Uncharted Territory podcast. I had launched it, believe sometime late July. It's on YouTube, Substack. Everybody feel free to, listen to it. It basically is a podcast, somewhat similar to today's conversation. Being a Palestinian American, I think it's imperative to amplify the Palestinian struggle within the U.S. mainstream media and combat and debunk a lot of talking points about the Palestinian people, Palestinian culture, but particularly, um, I think what I also hope to achieve is that whether it be with So yeah, the name of the podcast is the Uncharted Territory Podcast. If you guys look it up on YouTube or on Spotify or on Substack, it's got a photo of a globe and has a Palestinian flag wrapped around it with the name. Just because there's a few podcasts I think similar name to that. But I think objectively speaking, what I hope to achieve and what I want people to understand is that Palestinians are not children of a lesser God. They're not barbarians. Whether they be Palestinians that live in Israel proper or Palestinians that live in the occupied territories or live here in America, we are facing, I think, an onslaught that we have never seen before. And I really want the general public to understand the risk that it poses, not just to Palestinians, but to Israel and really to the fabric of American democracy itself.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, man. Maxime, you are up next, my friend.
Hi, yeah, I'm Maxim. It seems I'm the only Englishman here, which is very unfortunate. But yeah, my grandparents moved from Israel to England to study in the 60s and then stayed here because England is awesome. Um, so yeah, English Israeli. Used to spend a lot of time in Israel, haven't been for a few years now, which is very unfortunate. And my grandfather actually founded the Socialist Anti-Zionist Party of Israel uh, like just a couple of years before he left the country. So he left the mess with a lot of other people. But yeah, he was very prominent in kind of critique of Israel and other kind of democracy writings and philosophy and things like that.
Very fascinating. He was trying to undo a lot
Interesting
of the
guy.
mess the British put into place. So much for Kol HaKavod to him, then.
So,
Orla, if you can do us the honor, please introduce yourself.
I'm sorry, did you say me?
Yes, go ahead, Habibti.
Okay, hi. Sorry, I'm not showing my face because I would like to be mysterious. But my name is Ola. I'm a Palestinian American, born in Brooklyn, New York, first generation. My parents were born near Jerusalem. A few years ago, before COVID, I met a man and he's a Black Jew, and we're on a mission to convert to Judaism even though I'm Palestinian, did a DNA test and got some cool results back. And kind of it speaks to me, Judaism, which I guess is what it's supposed to do, right? Um, if you feel like you're you're a Jew. So Palestinian American with Jewish ancestry, trying to bridge the gap between our peoples and figuring out how to make peace and free Palestine.
Man, that's beautiful. Thank you so much, Orla. All right, Ari,
Thank you.
you're up next, my friend.
Hi, my name's Ari. I'm American Israeli. I was born in the U.S., lived in Israel for 20 years, and now I'm back in the U.S. I'm a little under the weather, so I'll probably do more listening than talking, but I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much, man. And last but not least, unless I'm forgetting someone, Justin, please introduce yourself, my friend.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know I was going to speak. Sure. Justin Habib. I'm a Palestinian with roots from the Jerusalem area. If you're familiar with Jerusalem, specifically the neighborhood of Beit Hanina in the north. I live, well, I like to say I live half and half, but lately it's been more in the US than I've been in living in Palestine. And I've been I've been an activist for quite a while now. It's been, I've been involved in several organizations, mainly Palestinian. And right before COVID, I started to learn Hebrew because I wanted to start to work with cross organizations. And then COVID came, and we weren't no longer allowed to study in campus anymore. So we started to learn over Zoom. And I started to learn about organizations online, meetings online and stuff that kind of took off. To be honest with you, I never used to talk to people online. I used to think it was like for weirdos only. I kind of still do think it's for weirdos, but it's more common now. So I started to get involved. I worked with certain organizations, met people, and that's how I met Elijah and Jad. I met you guys through Roots. I met some other people as well. I think I'm the one who introduced you guys to Head On, no?
Yes,
Yeah.
that honor belongs to you, my friend.
Oh,
100%.
okay. So I needed, Beata, you need to add me on that slide, man. Come on. Put me on that slide. Anyways,
My deepest
Um,
apologies. I'll do it
sure,
moving
no problem, no
forward.
problem. So I kind of bring an interesting perspective because I kind of have a foot in the U.S. Palestinian diaspora community, but I also have a foot in the Palestinians on the ground perspective. And real quick, Palestinian identity is interesting because it's very, very unified in the sense of its identity, but its perspective is very, very split. Like whether like I met this brother here, Abdul Halim. You know, we have a lot in common. I'm sure with me and Adam and Jad, we have so much in common. But because of where we live and experiences and stuff like that, we might have a lot of things as far as like I think we all agree what needs to be done. But the question is, how do we get there? And this is what splits Palestinians and really has created a crisis for us internally because Palestinians are really hard to work together when we have different opinions. It's hard. You Israelis are really good because you guys work together, even though you guys you get communist Jews and religious Jews, and I think maybe you guys have a common enemy and that helps. You guys work for an effort, and it's something that we need to work on. So I won't take any more time, but go ahead. Thanks.
You're all good. Thank you so much, Justin. I also want to apologize. I forgot two people that actually need to be introduced, Bilal and David. Since Justin just went, David, how about you go, and then Bilal, you will be the last person.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is David. I'm going to be 23. I was born in Israel. I was born religious, so I also have a Jewish background. I served in the IDF, and I still work with Arabs, Palestinians all over. So I have a lot to say about these, but I feel like from an ideology perspective, I think I'm far away from most of the people here. So this is going to be interesting.
We want all opinions, man. So thank you so much for being part of this. And Bilal, I'm going to leave you the honor of being the last introduction of the day. Then we'll get started.
You saved the best for last, Elijah. I knew it. Hello, everybody. Name is Bilal Daoud. Palestinian American. Lived, I would say, the most important parts of my life in Palestine, in the West Bank. Families from a small village just northwest of Jerusalem, and it's an interesting area, obviously. Being so close to multiple larger settlements, but also being part of the West Bank, so it's an Area B. That kind of creates kind of very specific certain circumstances that I think a lot of people may not notice or recognize, especially here in the States. It also gave me a lot of kind of a unique perspective among Palestinians living in Palestine. Half of my family have Jerusalem IDs. The other half have Dafla IDs. And so the green ID versus the blue ID, what changes that, depending on what you're going to do in the day, you'll probably try to jump in with a cousin that might have a yellow license plate rather than a green license plate. These are all things that a lot of Israelis don't even think about or consider. And so I think, between all of just my experiences there, crossing checkpoints, getting, going from just our small village to Ram every single day for school. I went to an American school when I was there. So just that process of dealing with that and crossing Kalandia on a daily basis was a critical moment of my life. I'll never forget it. At the same time, as an American, I've lived here I was born in the US, very Midwestern. You can tell by my flannel, of course. It is fall season, so I have to wear one of these. So, I really hope to bring kind of a nuanced approach and opinion to this. But I'm also, very, very vehemently, staunchly indigenous Palestinian. My family is, our village has been around since at least 900 AD. The olive trees in our land is older than that. In terms of a civilization, in terms of social changes between religions and between cultures. Our family has seen all of it, and you can see the remnants of those older ancient cultures in our daily work, in our activities, in our songs. And so I feel like I'm very much entrenched with the land and connected to it in a multitude of ways. And so I really hope that maybe between that and between the spirituality that Jews have with the land and the connection that Jews have with the land just through biblical connections, that we can see those similarities and we can see those points that bring us together, while at the same time realizing the misconceptions, the misunderstandings, and the falsehoods that were attributed or that were built throughout the Zionist narrative. And so we can really start to see that difference there. So yeah, appreciate being here, guys.
Thank you so much, Bilal. And I also want to give a shout out to Bilal because he's doing amazing work with a group called Pal Shield. They provide Palestinians in the West Bank support specifically against settler incursions, and so he's doing a lot of amazing work in that regard. And if you want to hear more, reach out to Bilal. But I'm gonna open the floor for people to raise their hand and start to participate in the conversation. As a reminder, the topic of conversation that we're starting with is what can we do to unite Jews and Palestinians in this moment? I'll leave it off to Jad to begin us, but I, as the moderator, can also chime in here and there to give my thoughts. Just a heads up. But yeah, Jad, take it away.
Thank you. Hopefully I won't try to go on for too long. Yeah, there's a lot to be said here. Well, so what I think is important to understand is the shared roots of the people in the land. There's a lot of miscommunication between the two peoples. And I think that if I speak from a Palestinian perspective, I think that, I think there are a good amount of Israelis who I speak to who don't truly understand the sort of depths of the Palestinian experience or the identity. I think there's some mischaracterization about it being, let's say, an Arabized identity or an Arab identity, I should say, or the kind of misconceptions about sort of I would say the trials that Palestinians go through, whether it be occupation or whether it be settler violence. And I think that we should do a better job, both peoples, in understanding sort of the common roots that we have. Atidna is proud to have sponsored numerous events in the ground, including Elijah. Of course, we co-sponsored a joint iftar in Jericho during Ramadan this year, in which we brought, I think it was over 1,000 Palestinians and Israelis. And so I know for a fact that it's possible for Palestinians and Israelis to sit together, to eat a meal, to listen to music, to dance, to sing. It's absolutely possible. And that comes through an ideology of joint solidarity between the people, and using that and using our roots in the land as a means to challenge the oppression that we see, whether it be the occupation or whether it be blockade, for example. You know, it's one thing for us to all understand one another, and then we have to transform that into a movement, right? And so Elijah is somebody who's thought of even this idea of like Canaanism, right? Like this idea of the people having indigenous roots in this land, Israelis, Palestinians, back to the ancient Canaanites who once lived there, right? And maybe creating a new identity that unites the two people. I'm all about challenging the status quo that we see right now on the ground. And I'm willing to come up with a creative solution to actually overcome these obstacles, because right now, the sort of pattern of bloodshed for Palestinians, the dispossession, the exile, I mean, khalas, it has to stop, obviously. It's completely unsustainable and immoral. And so going to the shared roots of our peoples and then using that to challenge the oppression, that's going to be the key going forward. But, you know, that's kind of the gist of it.
Thank you. Thank you. And just to repeat my moderation style, after one Palestinian participant speaks, then we'll move to the Jewish/Israeli participants. So Ari, I'm gonna let you go next, and then after that, Abdul Halim, then Tal.
Thanks. I guess I lied when I said I was going to do more listening than talking. I guess a topic that I wanted to bring up is the idea of how humanizing one another or humanizing the quote unquote other can help. Because as cheesy as it sounds, I do believe it helps for Palestinians to start humanizing Israelis and for Israelis to start humanizing Palestinians, because I think it's only going to happen from the bottom up. You know, Bibi, Abbas, Hamas, they're not going to start humanizing the other side. So I do think that it does help, even if it feels like small steps. But I was wondering what the group thinks and how it practically can move from just conversations like this over Zoom to real change.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Ari. Abdul Halim, you can either respond or you can have a unique sentiment that you bring up. Go ahead, man.
Well, firstly, thank you for everyone for for those thoughts. Certainly appreciate the insight. I want to say something that Ari just said. It's not really a retort, but just kind of more of a comment. I do agree. Humanization is very important. Whether it be Palestinians and Israelis humanizing one another. But I do think the biggest obstacle to that right now, and maybe we're going to disagree on wordage or terminology, is that right now what Palestinians are seeing from Israel, and again, I'm not generalizing everybody, but there is polling to back this up, and we do see this in the media. Unfortunately, a vast majority of Israeli society has been either indifferent or very gleeful towards the suffering of the people in Gaza. And we actively see them trying to block aid from coming into Gaza. That's one. Two, the minimal demand that exists right now in Israeli society to end the occupation, whether that be on a grassroots level amongst Israeli citizens and within the Israeli government itself. Like, I don't think there's a really true Israeli Jewish left wing outlet. I think the most leftist political party in Israel are its Palestinian Arab parties that exist right now. That's one of the main challenges that comes towards Palestinians seeing the other side. Because right now, all they see is a country that's being propped up by the most powerful nations in the world, that all those funds are being sent to a government in Israel that is hell bent on expelling all the Palestinians. And again, this isn't hyperbole. I'm not pulling a rabbit out of a hat here. Bezos Smotrich has said it. Itamar Ben-Gvir has said it. Benjamin Netanyahu has said it. It's not a mystery. It's very, very easy to find that. So that's one. While I agree with your sentiment, you're not wrong in what you said. Uh, this is the obstacle. Two, I think really as it pertains to the broader conversation at hand, like to truly understand one another, I really want Israeli Jews, whether you're Zionist or non-Zionist, to try to understand that like the responsibility particularly is not on Palestinians at this moment to, or really I should even say historically speaking, to try and get you to see us. Israel exists. We don't need to sit here and say Israel's right to exist. Israel's right to exist a billion times. We should not reaffirm something that already exists, right? What needs to happen is for Israel, its citizens, its government, and the powers to be of the world that uphold it to say that there is a people in this land called the Palestinians. They have an equal and just claim to this land. And just like the Jews that live in this land, they too are not going anywhere. And that we, as a society, as a global international community, and the US government must use its leverage that it has over Israel to get it to stop its occupation of the Palestinian people and get it to end what I believe and what many human rights scholars and otherwise believe to be a genocide in Gaza. That is how the humanization starts. That's how you create a process in which Israelis and Jews and Palestinians and Muslims coexist, is that the world has to force Israel to do it. Israel will not willingly do it. What I mean by force is I don't mean do October 7th over and over and over and over and over and over again until somebody finally, until one side cracks. I mean, the US has to tell Israel very clearly, if you value our strategic relationship, if you see us as a partner, then you will make peace with the Palestinians. That's how that happens. That's what I wanted to say. And let me know how you guys feel about that. And I appreciate everybody, being constructive and listening. And, of course, everything I said is in good faith. I have no ill will towards anyone here, Israeli or Jewish alike. It's my critiques are not aimed at Judaism or the Jewish people. I'm going to end here very briefly. They're aimed at a government and its actions that I believe to be particularly heinous.
Beautifully articulated, my friend. Beautiful. Tal, why don't you, if you want to respond, go ahead. If you want to have
Yes.
your own sentence, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I agree with I'm an Israeli. I agree with everything you just said. I think for me, I'm going to share my experiences. One of my first friends was a Palestinian girl that I actually reached out to my senior year to express my condolences for what was happening in Gaza. And I think that the issue is we're fed this narrative where Israel is the underdog. Israel is the underdog no matter what. Oh, look at all these Arab nations surrounded by, it's so disconnected from reality. I'll take a step back and I'm saying Syria wants peace with us. Lebanon doesn't want Hezbollah anymore. Egypt and Jordan have no problems with us. Our enemies can be neutral, whatever enemies exist can be neutralized through reasonable security measures without attacking civilians. So I don't see why this narrative of we should make Palestinians suffer makes sense. And I don't understand the narrative of collective punishment either. We won't even collectively punish our own Kahanists for being fascists or for terrorizing Palestinian settler homes, but we want to do the same to you? And the hypocrisy makes no sense. It's not consistent and it's not humane. I also think that part of the issue, I think that part of the realization for me was, oh, why can't we get along? And then it's like, oh, our military's doing that. Oh, oh. But I agree with you. I do think that the responsibility bears on us. Like, I think we're fed these certain narratives about Palestinians being and Arabs being evil or they're all out to get you. They're not. I grew up in a very diverse area with there's tons of Arabs, black people, Hispanics, Asians. I grew up in a very diverse area of Southern California. And so that kind of gave me the understanding, maybe this is all misguided. Maybe something's wrong here. And then it's like, okay, the occupation is wrong. And then, okay, something else is wrong. This Zionist narrative is wrong. And so for me, it's like, what are you gonna do? I mean, I try to educate my friends. I do what I can. And really, what it boils down to is, are you going to figure out how to use your privilege for good in Israeli Jewish society? I try to do that. I want to go vote for Hadash in next year. I'm trying to save up some money so I can go do that and vote for a party that is against the occupation. But it really comes down to whether you're willing to challenge that narrative. And I think for me as an Israeli, I try to challenge that narrative with my parents and other people in my spaces as well as I can.
Thank you. Thank you, Tal. Beautifully said. Justin, why don't you take the stage next, man?
Thank you. And to kind of like touch on what I said earlier about our feelings are the same, like what, Abdul Halim and Bilal said. I mean, I can so much relate to them. Bilal, the story that Bilal told you about living on the edge of a checkpoint. My city also, Bilal, I don't know what city you're from, but it sounds like we're neighbors. But like Beit Hanina, for example, was split up. It was split up to West Bank and Jerusalem. And in my situation, my wife is a West Banker, where my house is in Jerusalem side. So it came to the point where one of the reasons why I'm living in the United States more than back home is because my children are not allowed to live in my house. We had to literally, I mean, this wall that came between us literally split up our family. So when we talk about these experiences, when we sit and we talk, that the on the ground reality is that there are certain things that are happening that frustrates Palestinians, because we can sit here and say we're all equal, we're all suffering, we're all victims, but that's not the case. The situation for us is absolutely unlivable, and it destroys like everything, like just driving to the freaking hospital, your doctor's appointment. I mean, I remember the school that I used to go to, we had to go through a checkpoint. We had to go through, security checks and things like that. And my one of my kids was separated from us on the plane, and they had to go sit in the back. And when we got to, Ben Gurion Airport, I said, "So how was your experience sitting back there?" And they're like, "This was the worst trip of my life. I sat next to a birthright person of the same age. And this birthright person wouldn't shut the hell up." And this is the way my kid talks, by the way. Would not shut, well, they said shut the F up. But anyways, and they said that all they were talking about, I'm going back to my country and blah, 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 blah. And this was a flight from New York to Tel Aviv. And I sat there saying, like, this is a person who had like no clue that here is me, I'm a country, I'm a citizen of this person, this place, and this person is coming here like they're going to freaking Disneyland or something. Like no clue whatsoever about my identity and the people who are there. And it's frustrating because the elephant in the room always is Jewish supremacy. And unfortunately, it hits not just the right wing. It's not just Ben Gvir. It's not just Smotrich. It is everybody, including the most leftist Jews. And let me tell you this, I got involved in Palestinian politics and activism after Oslo, right after Oslo, okay? And I even embraced it. I'm a Palestinian, and I embraced Jewish supremacy because I said, you know what? We have to accept them, that they're supreme to us, that we're going to take something less than a sovereign state, an equal state, because that's all we can get. And to the point where I was making excuses to my people. Well, come on, dude, let's just make it work. Let's make it work. We're going to be an unarmed state. We're not going to control our border. We're not going to control our water resources. We're not going to control anything. And it got to the point where people like me, like Salam Fayyad, who was the prime minister of Palestine in the, what was it, like 2005, 2006, the most moderate person in the world. I mean, you can't get more moderate than him. He would hand you everything that you want, and he still wasn't good enough for these Zionists. And I started to think to myself, can Zionism reform? Can Zionism become an ideology that will denounce Jewish supremacy? Can it stop being this ethnic, racist ideology and just become about, hey, Jews want to come and live in their homeland. That's it. And I think after October 7th, I think the answer I came to conclude that Zionism is an ideology that needs to be, Jews need to get together and say, it's debunked. There is no such thing as a good Nazi. And there's no such thing as a good Zionist, in my opinion, anymore. Zionism is an ideology. Jewish supremacy is the key problem. And no matter how much we sit together and do all this stuff, this element needs to be eradicated.
Yep. Amen. Thank you. I'm gonna pass it on now to Adam. Adam, feel free to respond, and you don't have to agree. Remember, you can push back. You can say whatever you want. Please take it away, Adam. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, kind of interesting that I'm following Justin because I feel that some of my insights came from previous conversations with Justin. So, I'll tell you what I think the challenges are. So, I hear what people are saying here. Jews have to reject Zionism, or Jews have to recognize the suffering of the Palestinians on the other side of the border, on the wall or the fence or wherever they happen to be. The challenge is that in actual fact, it is almost impossible to do. And so somebody brought up the question, like, how are we actually going to scale this? I'm having conversations with fellow Israelis on a daily basis about this. And I can speak all day about the challenges to Palestinians. We need to see them. We have to understand, they have equal roots in the land, even more. None of this lands. And the reason it doesn't land is because they're terrified. Israelis are terrified and Jews are terrified. And so they're not operating with the kind of cognitive bandwidth that you would wish they operated in, because whether it's true or not, they feel like they're in survival mode right now. And so what I would ask of both Israelis and Palestinians here is, we need to come up with tools and techniques to help convey these messages to Israelis, despite them being in that mode right now. And so moralizing simply doesn't work. I could say, they have to, sit through Kalandia for many hours a day. They'll be like, yeah, but the alternative is that they're going to kill me. So what do you want me to do? So it may or may not be true, but that is the cognitive loops that are playing in their minds. And unless we address that, the genuine fear that they express, you speak to Israelis on the ground, it's mostly fear. If we're unable to address that, I feel like the rest of the cognitive kind of download is simply not, it backfires. It doesn't land. And we'll be fooling ourselves to think otherwise.
Can I ask you a follow-up question, Adam, if that's all right?
Please.
I want to ask you, why do you think that fear exists? Because I think every Palestinian that's had the chance to speak thus far has not advocated for expelling Israelis, has not advocated for any form of violence. Where do you think that fear is coming from, and why is it so pervasive?
Yeah, I would say it's maybe two-pronged. One is well justified and one is poorly justified. So I'll start with the poorly justified. it is often propped up by cynical politicians who try to divide us and control us, and by a media that is leveraging it. So that's an easy sort of solution to understand. It feels very identity based. It doesn't feel political, and this I think is true if you look at many cases. So like I did some study on this the other day, which I thought was interesting. Every time that I see a rocket flying my way, I never pause to say and to think, I wonder what political points these people are trying to make to me. That's not, no, I'm just running to the shelter, right? And that's it. And so and the fact that it's so indiscriminate, it seems to be shooting towards anywhere, feels like, and it's very easy to interpret as, they just hate us for who we are. And there's no rational political grievance that is motivating it. This on top of layers of actual trauma and actual anti-Semitism that Jews are carrying with them, plus peppered with some genuinely anti-Semitic phrases from some of their enemies, make it seem like the violence is not political, but is identity and hate-based, which fuels that fear. I also think that the way that terrorism functions is scary in a very different way from how military violence functions. I feel like it's something about the arbitrariness of sitting at a coffee shop and it blowing up. Feels something happens psychologically, I don't know what the mechanism is, that puts people on constant edge, which makes them, I think, it's even more difficult to actually have rational conversation with them.
Bilal, I want to give you the floor now. You can either respond or you can have your own unrelated sentiment. Take it away, man.
Yeah, so I will respond to a couple of things, Adam, since they're fresh on the mind, since you just mentioned them. More snarky comment, if you will, not necessarily snarky, but funny. But in terms of indiscriminate, bombardment or the indiscriminate fire, I have an easy solution. The U.S. can just send precision rockets and precision weapons to the Palestinian resistance groups, and then we won't have any random bombardments or whatever. The point of the matter is that you're talking about asymmetric warfare. And so there's a lot of this that, just to kind of compare it to, for example, the Warsaw Uprising, or where they also dug tunnels to protect their families and to fight for their honor and their dignity. A lot of this is simply based on what you have available to you. And this wouldn't, if you were to look at the history of this struggle, from the very beginning, even before the establishment of the state, the first people to bring the guns, okay, and to establish settlements, the kibbutzim were settlements, okay? From the very beginning, they were militarized before anything else. And because Zionism at its root is a settler colonial mindset, and so they were seeing themselves as a Western group, as a Western European Eurocentric group in a sea of savages. Okay. And so to them, it was only just like how, say, the Pilgrims and the American colonists first started heading out westward and called them called the Native American savages. It was the same way, and so from a very beginning, there was an us versus them mentality. These were not people that were coming back to their land or to their homeland and wanting to settle and become Palestinian Jews. No, they were there to take the land and to push the people out. And so from a very, very beginning perspective, there was an us versus them mentality that really is deeply rooted up until today. We ask why, for example, there's terrorism and why there seems to be this violence when we can just talk it out. The Israeli government, the Israeli society has a word for it. It's called hafrada, right? Hafrada, for those Hebrew Hebrew speakers, you guys can correct me on the way to say it, but hafrada, right? The idea of separation between peoples is built into your guys' laws. It's built into the rules, and that didn't start recently. This started from the very beginning and establishment of the state. So the idea, the whole premise of the state, whether the people like it or not, the premise of the state was always an us versus them, to drive out the indigenous, to drive out the people that live there, the people that, in all intents and purposes, genetic studies show, come from the same ancestors, right? Come from the same people that the Israeli Jews today consider as their ancestors. We are descendants of the same people. I'm a child of Isaac, right? I'm not a child necessarily genetically speaking. I'm Muslim, but I'm a child of Isaac. My people, they were, we grew up, we were Jewish, and then when the Byzantines and the Romans, Christianized, we probably became Christian, and yes, and then after a while, when the Arab empires spread and they brought Islam with them, we became Muslim for many different reasons. Some, and I can't guess on what the reason my specific ancestors may have decided to change. But the fact of the matter is, we're just as Judean, even more so genetically speaking, okay, than many Israelis today that consider themselves the descendants of the Hebrews. And so it's not a genetic thing. Then what is it, right? What is the situation? The situation is that there's two different societies, one that was built in Europe during the most nationalist time of Europe, right? With this idea of ethnic nationalism or an ethno-state, if you will. And they brought that with British help. Where's that Brit? There he is. I'm gonna, as an American, listen, bub, me and the redcoats don't mix. I'm just joking. But yeah, the Brits came and brought that, and just like they set up colonies across the world, that was the one in the Middle East. And so this is basically, this is essentially the way to fix this, in my opinion, because, and I don't want to take up too much time. I want to hear what everybody else thinks and says, but the idea of two states is not fair to either people. It's definitely not fair to the Palestinians, especially the ones that were expelled in the Nakba or in 67 or whenever. It's not fair to those spiritual Jews that seek Aliyah, that want to return to their spiritual ancestral homeland, as they did before Zionism. Many Jews returned to the homeland and lived as Palestinians, and probably many of them living in Mia Sharim until today are staunchly anti-Zionist for it, right? So the idea that Jews couldn't go to Palestine before the rise of the state is bullshit. The idea that Jews are not welcome in Palestine after the dissolution of the state is also bullshit. And so the idea, really, what really comes down to at the end of the day is the Zionist opinion, as Adam very nicely put it, of fear and isolation. Isolate and fear the world. Everybody is out to kill you, and therefore we have to absolutely be scared of everyone and protect ourselves, and therefore so we have to have this, like, I don't know what you want to call it. It's I don't know. It's a mess, is what it is. I guess that's the best way to put it. It's a fucking mess. So I'll let you guys take it from there.
Thank you so much, Bilal. And before Maxim will return to you, because I know we've had two Israelis that have not had the opportunity to speak yet, David and Aveva. If either of you want to go next, please just let me know. But if not, Maxim, you can take it away, man. Floor is yours.
Fantastic. Yeah, look, I think the constant inconvenience to the lives of Palestinians in Judea and Samaria is possibly the primary aggravating factor. Like, if nothing else, obviously there's a lot else, but if nothing else, the checkpoints, the difficulty with passports, all of these things. It's if you want to create a problem with the people, I'd say that's how you do it. I couldn't think of a way to make things more difficult and to constantly aggravate the problem. Having said that, the checkpoints exist for a reason, and they solved, or not solved, they did treat the issue of the terror attacks, which were occurring through the 80s and 90s especially, and still today. And Bilal, to comment on your point about the precision munitions, the terror attacks on the cafes, they were very deliberate. When you walk into a cafe with a bomb, it's not an accident. So Obviously there's so much to cover. But yeah, I do agree that the onus, the responsibility lies with Israel because Israel has the power. There is nothing that the Palestinians could do which would force Israelis to uh, go one way or the other, really. Um, if there is to be a positive way forward, it has to come from Israel. And yeah, of course, pressure on Israel from America mostly, really only America, um, can definitely have a part in that. Uh, yeah, I mean, there's so much to cover. I don't want to go on about things. One thing I think is worth saying though is that I find often the Adam touched on this, but I think it's broader, is the Israeli experience, the Jewish experience. Not in terms of like trauma and things, but in terms of how Jews conceptualize themselves is something which unless that is really kind of like Jews feel they are getting acknowledged in that this is our land. Not in terms of we're the only people who can live here, we're the only, not like that, but like it's our homeland. It's where our ethnogenesis happened. It's where we became the Jewish people, Jew from Judea. This matters a lot, and I think it's something which is very often overlooked.
If I can ask you a follow-up question, Bilal pretty much touched on this in his answer, but as he articulated, I think there's a misunderstanding as well from the Jewish side about the ethnogenesis of the Palestinian people. Specifically, many of them come from the same ancestors as us, right? Going all the way even back before the Israelites to the Canaanites. They happened to stay in the land, whereas we got enslaved into Rome, into Spain. Others were expelled into Iraq and North Africa. But fundamentally, by the understanding of both people's identities in an authentic sense, it's both people's homelands. Do you think your notion of a Jewish homeland excludes the notion that this is also a Palestinian homeland as well?
No, I think they can conceptually, at the very least, they can absolutely both. They do. They are both factual. They're both factual realities. The issue is in bringing those factual realities into a concrete, manifest solution that actually works for both peoples to move forwards in a satisfactory lifestyle.
Thank you so much, man. I'm going to pass it off to the Palestinian Adam. Adam, you have the floor, my friend.
Thank you. So I think it's been a really good discussion so far. I just want to kind of touch on a few things as well as level set. I think with a lot of these dialogue groups, it's good to level set on some, common facts, or at least what I believe to be the facts on the ground. And I take a pretty simplistic view of everything related to Israel and Palestine. And basically, I look at it as the history, it's so deep. We can look at it from so many different angles. We can go back so far, we can go back recent. We're never going to necessarily agree on history. One thing that I think both peoples can work on is the history is really both of our histories, right? It's not like it's your history and my history. It's a history of the cumulative land and the peoples amongst it. So we have to own all elements of the history eventually. But nevertheless, I don't think we're going to get to a solution just based on understanding or agreeing on each other's history. Eugenics and race, and at this point, are we going to really start going into conversations about who us alive today, who's more indigenous, who's less indigenous? It's a circular argument, and I don't think that gets us to a solution. What I do know is from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, there's roughly 7 million Jewish Israelis and roughly 7 million Palestinians, Arabs, the Christians, the Muslims, whatever you want to call them, the Druze, the Samaritans, whatever. And that alone tells you that there's no solution here that tries to put one over the other. The status quo that we have seen for decades has led us to this point. So whether you are for the status quo and what has been in place, it has led to this point, which is an unbearable situation. Whether you think, Oslo was the answer to all the problems and kind of settling on one state, two states, it has still led us to this point. So what is this point? And I look at it very simply. This point is you have one land, and at this point you look over there, you see an Israeli settlement. You look over here, you see a Palestinian village. You look over here, you see a Palestinian city. You look over here, you see an Israeli city, all within the same breathing air. Can we really point over here and say, that's a different nation than mine, that's a different country than mine, despite us literally on the same physical land where the water sources are the same, the electricity grids are the same, right? We're pulling from the exact same place. And when you look at the architecture of the land right now, I find that many people will say, oh, the West Bank, it's not Israel. When I cross over from Jordan through the border, I go through an Israeli border security. I go through a physical Israeli border control. What does that tell you? Who controls the border, right? When I go through the West Bank and you see the checkpoints, you see military zones that are doing drills. What does that tell you? Who controls the West Bank? So this illusion, right? So these are just acknowledging facts on the ground, right? That there is two states, and no, there's one state, call it all Israel right now, and because that's who controls it. And you have people that are Israeli there and then non-Israelis. At this point, in what modern society can you have one entity that has this much control over everyone, but designating half of the people or a good majority of the people non-citizens and the other half citizens? It doesn't work in any other country. And a lot of people, a lot of us, a lot of Israelis, a lot of Palestinians, we've had the privilege of living in other places now, living in Western societies. We would not accept these laws and rules and this architecture in any of those countries. Why do we accept it here? When it's in my mind, it's because a lot of people say, well, that's how it has to be. Okay. That mentality has led us to this today. And that today is a disaster. So we have to get out of this mindset that whatever it is and has been can continue to work. We can have relative calm for 10 years here, 10 years there, and then it blows up and we'll deal with it. No, I don't think anybody wants that anymore. So understanding, though, that there is a reality on the ground for these Palestinians. It's not just some illusion. It's not just some Hollywood. It's not like Palestinians are just taking videos of actors putting blood on their face. Like, the evidence is there of real suffering day in and day out. And as long as that suffering doesn't get alleviated in any way, then how can we expect there not to be violence and terrorism? I mean, come on, you have, and let's just also take a step back and understand that Palestinians are fragmented, and they're based on where they physically are gives them how much rights they have. So what do a lot of Israelis like to say? 20% of our population is Arab with rights and freedoms. And guess what? That's true. And a lot of them are relatively happy. Why are they happy? Because they have rights and freedoms. Okay. Palestinians in the West Bank have very little rights and freedoms. Why are they unhappy? Because they don't have rights and freedoms. So then the conversation, who is responsible for giving them rights and freedoms? I don't know. When I go over the border from Jordan, I go through Israeli border control. When I'm driving on the roads, I see Israeli military. They're the ones that have the ability to give them Palestinian rights and freedoms. A lot of people say, oh, they vote for the PA. What does the PA have control over? Why would I vote in some election that has no control over anything when there's a bigger election that takes place that has control over anything, right? So we have to start to really accept these realities that don't work in any other nation. And if we talk about Western democracies and stuff, they don't exist. Those who have grown up in America, we understand how diverse America is and how much it has had to reckon with when it comes to its past with the African Americans, its past with Native Americans. And you can't just put Band-Aids on these and think, oh yeah, just a little bit here, a little bit there. It's like these people have to be treated as equals. Then I know there's bigger questions. If we now suddenly have one state, all 7 million Arabs and Palestinians have citizenship, and all Jewish Israelis have citizenship, what does that mean for the Jewish state? I mean, these are real questions that have to be asked. But then, it comes down to, a lot of people say it's a Jewish state where we look at Zionism as a place where we just have the right to self-determination. Okay, if that's the case, then it can't be, you're not acknowledging the superiority of it, right? If you just believe 7 million, can have this right to self-determination. So do I. More, 9 million, 10 million, you all do. But then as long as it doesn't come at the expense of us or anybody else that is also a indigenous there. So anyway, I'll stop there and let someone else go.
Very powerful points, Adam. I just want to summarize because I think we're getting a pretty coherent narrative on the Palestinian side that one of the main impediments to the unity of our two peoples is structural. One people wields more power, arguably all the power in the land, and the other people have nothing, right? And they're being dominated, right? And so I think a question that is implicitly being imposed by the Palestinian side is what needs to be done to address this structural imbalance, right? And Abdul Halim brought up the point of America needs to pressure this, right? I've heard other Palestinians in the chat say this is Jews needing to confront other Jews about this issue. So I think, and if you're Palestinian, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I'm getting from your side. But Aveva, I saw that you've had your hand up for a while. I want to give you the floor since you haven't had a chance to speak yet. I apologize to Bilal, Abdul Halim, and Tal. I know you've also had your hand up for a while. We'll get to you guys after Aveva. Aveva, please take the floor.
Yeah, I'll try not to take too long, but
As long as you want.
a lot has been said, and a lot of which I agree with, and some that I maybe not disagree, but wondering if it's in any way possible. First and foremost, in my opinion, how do we bring the two people together? I think first and foremost, we have to agree that it would be a long journey towards a solution. Like there's no fast track to getting to the solution. And that's me trying to be realistic, right? Because I'll be happy to have any solution that is acceptable on both sides, whether it's like two states, one state, like Jadad said, like creating a new identity that is accepted on both groups. I think that would be hard because people are leaning towards their identity, religion, and the way they grew up. Like it's not something that we easily can change with people. Um, so that is my first thought. And then I heard a lot about Zionism, and I know that subject is this word is almost offensive to some people. Um, um, but the way I know that word is like my parents came from Ethiopia. They lived in a village, a small village in Ethiopia. They thought basically they are the last Jews in the world, and they were called Beta Israel. They were called the House of Israel. They knew that they need to return home to Israel. And I'm not sure, like I think Balal said, it was easy to go back to Israel without the state of Israel, right? But for my people, for my parents, it wasn't. Like the only way they can do it was like through a harsh journey. They walked and struggled with like discrimination and racism, like anti-Semitism in Ethiopia and Sudan, and they were able to come to Israel with the help of the state. So I know there are a lot of bad things happening in Israel. I know that Israel has the upper hand, obviously. There's no question about it. I'm wondering if there is something that the Palestinian people can do with bringing us closer to the solution. And why I'm saying it is because I hear a lot of Israeli voices around me, whether it's family, friends, um, and they are looking for voices that are calling for peace, and it's not easily to reach. I would say for some of the Israeli, and it's not that they are like all innocent, right? But the first thing that I think we need to do is bring the people closer, like find the common ground between two groups, bringing them to conversation, like if it's whether it's face to face or like finding way to just gap the bridge between the two people because we are close in like geography, like we're super close, but we don't know anything, almost anything about the experiments of each group. So I think that would be a good beginning, starting to bring people closer and like learning more about the different experience of both sides, and each sides have different voices. That's important to bring too, and not think like all those people think the same thing or all the Israelis think the same thing, because it's much more complex than that. Yeah, that's all I have to say for now.
Beautifully said, and thank you so much. And I think a common narrative I'm seeing from you, alongside a lot of other people in the chat, not just on the Israeli side, but also on the Palestinian side, is the notion that what is most important is A, being able to be in the land, not necessarily the state, right? And if you can create a structure where both peoples are full and equal participants of a common structure, they can both live in the land, they can both experience their identities fully and have equal access to all parts of the land, that would be amazing. And so I think that would be a great next step in this conversation is how do we achieve that? If that's what we define as the common aspiration we want to work for, what do we need to do to get there? And so Abdul Halim, you've had your hand up for a while, Habibi. I'm going to pass it off to you before we get to David, because David has had Zoom's a little hard to manage and understand. David messaged me that he also has his hand up, so he will be after you, Abdul Halim. But take it away, man.
So firstly, my response is going to encompass everyone else's response. Like I heard Bilal and Justin talk about the Palestinian experience, just like the brutal nature of the occupation, how dehumanizing it is. And I think one way to encapsulate this segment of the conversation is, I think, to answer a question Israelis, I don't think either don't know the answer to or they don't want to acknowledge, in that understanding why October 7th happened is such a big part of this. Um, for me, I'm not somebody that like always preaches, yeah, go fight, while I'm sitting here in the comfort of my home from America. Yeah, you go fight, Palestinians. Go fight the nuclear armed state Israel. And I'm going to sit back here in the comfort of my home and I'm going to watch it all unfold. To me, that just seems a bit disingenuous. Um, but the reason why October 7th happened is because for the reasons that Beled and Justin explained. We are dealing with a brutal, decades-long systemic occupation that quite frankly makes segregation in the US and apartheid blush. I think it's much worse than that. There weren't checkpoints in either. Um, you didn't have militias going, or well, you didn't have militias going around ethnically cleansing and displacing and killing people at any random given moment like you do in the West Bank with Israeli settlers. And in seeing how the Middle East, particularly Saudi, the UAE, and all the other Gulf monarchies were so willing at one point to just sidestep the Palestinian cause and normalize with Israel, normalize the occupation, normalize that this is okay, that the Palestinians do not have any rights, any freedom, that this is going to be a permanent configuration. Is why Hamas did October 7th. It's why they did something so drastic that Palestinians thought would never happen, is that they'd bear arms and literally invade Israel and kidnap people and kill people. I'm not saying that that was a great idea. I'm not saying that was a good idea. I know there's very different opinions on it. But this act of violence, which was so brazen and so confrontational and so personal, while violent, wasn't born out of random sadism or hatred for Jews as the way it's being portrayed to Israel, or as the way it's being portrayed to Jews here in the US, or the way it's being portrayed to Israelis. It is because Israel has made it a hobby to circumvent, bypass the Palestinian issue and getting away with it. How many years has the United States and Britain and the UK and Germany and France been funding and supporting Israel with no conditionality whatsoever? Decades. As long as any of us have been alive here, and as long as our parents have been alive, even some of our grandparents, that's how long it's been, right? Uh, how many, how much of historic Palestine has Israel ever offered to the Palestinians as a way to make peace with the Palestinians and end the occupation and the conflict? None. The key reasoning here is that I hear, like, for an example, I heard David say, suicide bombings, and he referred to Judea and Samaria. And, of course, I'm not trying to call you out in a hostile manner. But when you praise the checkpoints and then you refer to it as like Judea and Samaria, it's that type of eraser that makes Palestinians feel that you don't give a shit. Pardon my French. Not you personally, but why Israelis don't care. Oh, we're just gonna put a checkpoint up for the Wildechai, the animals, as some of the Israelis like to call us. We could just keep them here. It doesn't matter, right? Their existence doesn't matter from us. And then on top of that, if you don't want these heinous things to happen, the reason why October 7th happened and that Palestinians use violence is because violence is an instrument, unfortunately, in this context of communication and contextualizing the struggle. Violence, unfortunately speaking, is the only way for Israel to remember that there are these people called the Palestinians that exist. Do you really think for the Israelis in this chat, for the Jews in this chat, for anybody that's gonna be watching this later on, the way that October 7th is being portrayed, tell me, was Israel ever even debating ending the occupation of the West Bank before October 7th? No. Was Israel hell-bent on creating a continuous state between Gaza and the West Bank? No, not at all. And it's because of those checkpoints that you had mentioned, David, the settler violence, women giving birth at checkpoints. I'll even be more graphic. There was a UN human rights report on the Commission of Women's Rights in the occupied Palestinian territories, and there's been dozens of instances of sexual assault against both Palestinian men and women at checkpoints. Dozens of instances of rape in Israeli prisons, as we know, Saleh Tiem. And this is a society right now that does not care. You have right now you have politicians endorsing people, Israeli soldiers and settlers who literally stuck an assault rifle inside of a man to the point where his intestines ruptured. And the question in Israel right now is, was he a Nukhba or was he just a citizen? Was he a civilian or was he Hamas? Never mind the fact that you got caught sticking something inside of a man and nearly killing him and then saying it was fake. Every time Palestinians struggle or are dehumanized or have some type of horrific thing happen to them, there's always a caveat. Well, they made it up with this or that. My point being is that it really frustrates me sometimes where it's like we always have to explain ourselves. But when we try to talk peacefully with the Israelis, they basically give us the middle finger and then they wonder why the October 7th happens. I'm not saying I like what happened that day, but this is important. If you want Palestinians to disarm, if you want there for groups for Hamas to not exist, then understand one thing. The formation of groups like Hamas and the armed groups and the violence is not antithetical to history. The IRA in Ireland did very, 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 very similar things. The FLN, when it fought France's Algeria occupation of France. What about South Africa? Very similar methodologies. And in today's day and age, we even look at some of those people as freedom fighters and heroes. So right now it seems bad, but 20, 30 years from now, I guarantee you that discourse about Palestinians' use of violence in the context of liberation and in the context of amplifying the Palestinian cause will be instrumental, even if it was devious, some of the things that happened that I don't agree with and I don't endorse. And as I said, I'm not a supporter per se of armed violence. These things are going to happen as long as this occupation continues, as long as there's apartheid, and as long as there's genocide. I'm very, very sorry if I rambled a little bit too much, but I really need the other side to hear that. Because it's not up to me and how I feel about armed resistance or what's terrorism or what's armed resistance. It's that the people that are dehumanized on a daily basis and are being killed, they're going to be pushed to the brink so much to where they have to do something drastic like that again to get you to realize that they exist.
Very powerful points, my friend. I want to give David the floor, and I also want to mention that we will be extending this because we did some introductions in the beginning by 15 minutes, and then at the end of those 15 minutes, we will open up the floor for Q&A. I know there's a lot of questions in the chat. Save that. You'll be able to ask your question at 6:35 on the dot. Okay, David, take it away, my friend.
All right. Well, I wrote so much, so I don't know where to start. But first, I'll start with the question of the fear. Someone talked about the fear, and then you asked them, why did you think like that? I haven't heard anyone talking about this, about the other side of this conflict, which is extreme terror and hate, which is very simple. I don't know where you guys grew up or what is your experience with Israel. Someone said, I think it's Todd, said that he grew up in a very, very diverse area in South Carolina. So
Southern
California.
California, yeah.
Southern California. Yeah. Southern California isn't Israel. That's not the same. That's not the same people. That's not the same
I
culture.
understand.
That's not the same way to interact with each other. So that's not relevant at all. The idea that there are a group of people that are just tortured and then powerful people torturing them, and that's it, is simply not looking at reality. And this debate can go into the clash of our stories and try to create a new narrative or whatever. I'm not going into that because of two reasons. One, most of the narrative should be based on history, and listening to y'all, you need to learn history. I'm sorry. 90% of what you said isn't true. 90%. And if I had time, I would do one-on-one with all of you. But I'll try to do something else, which is be realistic and ask what can we do next. So I'll try and say this as an Israeli who's on the right side, serving the IDF. I'm on the other side of the ideology, and I'm trying to portray what is actually realistic. So first of all, there's not going to be two-state solution. Nobody in Israel is going to agree to that. I think Elijah said that because of the fear of terror, the fear of having a rocket in front of my eyes, that is still existing and it will exist, especially after October 7th. So that's not going away. And a two-stage solution is not going to happen, not by America, not by any political party ever, even if you're going to vote for Hadash. It's not going to make a difference. I'm trying to be realistic. Another thing is the talks about giving citizenship to Palestinians, 2.5 million, I think, in Judea and Samaria. And I'll explain later why I called it Judea and Samaria. That's not disrespecting the Palestinians, but also these people will not get citizenship anytime soon because of simply math. If they're gonna get citizenship, they're gonna get to vote. If they're gonna get to vote, they're gonna have much greater political power, and that's gonna be a threat to the Jews. Why it's going to be a threat to the Jews? That's simply looking around most of the Muslim countries. There's a reason why most of the Jews don't exist in most of the countries right now. There's a reason why for the last 4,000 years, everybody's kicking our asses. Like this is not Palestinian versus Jews. This is the history of the Jews is that we cannot let another nation sovereign us. And maybe it sounds condescending or how did someone call it? Not how do you say that? Supremacist.
Supremacist.
Yeah, exactly. That's the word. That's not supremacy. It's simply survival. It might sound like supremacy. It's not. We don't care about other people that much. We don't have an internal want to control another nation. We don't give a fuck. We just want to live. So that survival instinct will make sure that we have control over Israel. So a two-stage solution and a citizenship, that's not realistic. What else? Someone talked about creating like a joint Israeli identity, which is quite interesting. But I have a couple of thoughts of it. Also, just like cue me when you want me to be done. So I don't know. I'm just ranting because I have a lot to say.
No
Okay?
restrictions. No restrictions. Yeah.
All right. Someone talked about creating a joint new identity for everybody. That's a problem. First of all, Jews, like the Judean identity is one that cannot mix with others. So nations and empires across history tried to mix with us. They tried to make us become Christians, become Muslims, or they tried to spread us apart. And the idea of Judaism is that we can only be Jews by marrying Jewish women and continuing the genome. So we have to stay together as a nation. There is no mix. So because of that, we also culturally have those rules that it's not restrict us from mixing, but just creates these boundaries. Those were called halakha. Those were religious rules. And now, as you know, most of Jews are not religious. So those laws are not practiced, but the spirit of them, the idea that we are a sovereign nation and that we don't mix in that way, is still existing, and that's all right. That's the right of every culture to stay as a culture, right? So that means that in order to create a joint identity, we have to create something very else than just have a joint culture, because we won't have just a joint culture. So an example of that would be the Druze or the Bedouin that are right now mixing very good inside of the Israeli society by taking their role inside of national, it's not entities, but like the IDF and the Shout Leumi, and then later and so on, and government in every entity of the society. So by becoming Israeli, not Jewish, the Druze are now Israeli. The Bedouin now are Israeli. They haven't dropped their ethnic culture, but they understood that they are a part of a country. And the fact that the Palestinians are not doing that and trying to sustain that idea of Palestine is what still creates that problem of joint Israeli identity. And that's not going to go the other way around. So, like, Israelis won't become Palestinians. We won't like the identity of that. We don't like the story of it, because when we hear Palestine, all we hear is Jews are not welcome here. This is not the home of the Jews, right? So also by when you say like Palestinian identity, the name Palestine itself is not as old as the Palestinian identity. So like your identity does exist. It just that's not the name. That's not the representation of it. You want to call it that way, call it that way. But now that representation has a lot of negative attributes to it. And that's going to be very hard for Palestinians to.
Just for the sake of time, if it's okay, David, because I know we're
Yeah,
running
let's
out of
let's
time.
do
Stick
that.
with Rob, it's okay. I want to leave I want everyone who has their hand up to share one more time at least. And I got a message from from Justin that he has to run, so I'm going to leave him the next comment. But I do want to pose a question based on what David brought up. It sounds like. And David, I also want to mention something. It sounds like from what Jad, because Jad was the one who brought up the idea of a joint identity in which we can be full and equal participants. Jad was distinguishing between national identity and ethnic identity. I think Jad wants Jews to continue being Jews. I think he wants Arabs to continue being Arabs, but he wants an identity where Jews and Palestinian Arabs can point to and say, we both believe in this. We both identify with this. We are both full.
That's what we call the Israeli identity. That's what we have with the Druze and the Bedouin,
But for
so on and so on.
Palestinians, they'll say what you just said about the Palestinian identity. For example, to say it's a Jewish identity. We feel excluded by this. We feel oppressed by this.
No, the Israeli identity is not Jewish. If you want to call it Palestinian identity, sure, it's just a word. But what is the culture that we share right now? What is it? We have one country, one land.
There's a law. There's a 2018
Yeah.
nation law that says this is a Jewish state, right? That the symbols of the Jewish, the anthem.
It's a democratic and Jewish state.
No,
It's
the
not gonna be
identity. The identity, you know, I really appreciate. Sorry, I'm going to step
Sorry,
in.
go ahead,
but,
Justin.
because
You go
I have to
next.
leave in.
Justin, then Orla. Go ahead, Justin.
I really appreciate David, because as much as what he says is absolutely, how should I say this, obscene to the Palestinian ear and crazy, he's pretty much based, because he represents probably the majority of Israelis. And one thing I warned Elijah about when he has this meetings is that, and it didn't happen, it almost happened, but it didn't happen, was that we're going to get into this whole, what is Jewish identity? Jews are from Judea and Arabs are from Arabia. And thank God, you know, Maxim did try to kind of get us down that spiral, but we kind of left it. And the thing is that, you know, we Palestinians and Palestinian Arab society have a longer history than any people on the land. But forget that. Let's forget that, because we want to deal with the here and now. And I will gladly, Maxim, go to Hebron, you and me, and pull a DNA from the prophet Abraham, and we'll do a DNA test. We'll do a Pepsi challenge. I swear to you, if your DNA is 2%, 10%, 20% closer to him than me, I will give you my house key and
Brother,
say,
you have to remember that Jews have to marry Jewish women. We
Yeah.
for
I
like
know.
5,000 years.
But anyways, let's moderate it. So I want to touch base on more reality rather than fantasy, and specifically the fear factor, because I think my friend Adam, he talks about a lot. He's a very fearful guy for some reason. I showed him a picture of somewhere in the West Bank, and he said, "Oh, I can see me being hung up here by Palestinians." Israelis should be fearful. I'll be straight with you. They should be fearful. And you know how they should deal with fear? Protecting their neighborhoods. But 800 of the West Bank blockades and checkpoints don't come between Israelis and Palestinians. They come between Palestinians and Palestinians. So when you go from Ramallah to Jerusalem, you go through the Kalandia checkpoint. It divides Aram from Beit Hanina. It doesn't divide Pisgat Ze'ev from Aram. It doesn't divide Ramot from Kalandia. So you have the right to be feared. And let's talk about October 7th. October 7th is a fine example.
Hold on.
David, I'm sorry. David,
Okay,
I'm about to
No, there's
run.
no interruptions.
Yeah. So let me give you an example. Gaza, a hostile government or militia, I don't even want to call it a government, against Israel. How many troops were protecting the border of Gaza on October 7th? 767, to be exact. Okay, meanwhile, you have 100 settlers or 400 or 500 settlers in Hebron that have daily 2,000 soldiers protecting them. So if Adam and David are scared and fearful about Palestinians, protect your border, protect your communities, put walls around, build them up to the sky if you want, but around your towns. But in my city, Beit Hanina, the wall doesn't go separating us from you guys. It comes right in between us and separating Palestinians from other Palestinians. If you guys, you guys have enemies in Egypt, you have enemies in Lebanon, build your borders, protect your borders, and you won't have these problems. And this is people like David and people like these guys. The reason why I'm a two-state, so I'm going to use the words of Nana Shrawi. She did it with Mahdi Hassan. She said the reason why I support a two-state solution is because I'm a realist. We can't live with people like David. We can't live with people like Maxim. We have to have separation. And maybe someday we'll become civilized where we can live in one state, because it is not the just solution. And this is Hanan Ashrawi's word. She said, it's not the just solution, but the best solution for us to move forward, build our institutions, and go forward. Because honestly, most Israelis are like David. They are going, and he's going to tell us, we don't know our history. Habibi, we don't know our history. You're going to tell me what Zionism is? I will tell you what Zionism is because I've been a victim of Zionism my entire life. And you're going to tell me I don't know my history? Habibi, I was born before you. I know my history. I will teach you your history. Okay, don't tell us we don't know our history, because we know very well what you've done. It is taught in our house. It is told every year. Our grandparents told it to us. And I don't care if you find a Palestinian in Chile or in America or in Amman or in West Bank or the 48 territories. We know very well, because this is not ancient history that Maxim believes in that gives him a right to a 3,000-year-old civilization. Okay, this is history of my grandfather, my father, etc. This is just recent. Anyways, guys, so this is a reality. The reality is dealing with this fear factor is that, does the Israeli factor of fear give them the right to control and occupy and terrorize the Palestinians, these West Bank animals that are running abound, the settlers that are going to burn our olive trees and burn our homes and kill people, some of which are American citizens, by the way? This is the question we have. And you're telling me you're scared? Habibi, we are scared. Who should be more scared to us? How many Israeli civilians were killed? How many these missiles that you're so scared of? We're the ones sitting at a cafe and then getting hit, or a settler coming into our neighborhood burning our house. You want to tell me about fear? We got fear. I don't understand. You got the victim. You're the victim. And now the Palestinians have to pay the price for worldwide anti-Semitism too? What is this, dude?
I want to be respectful. Thank you. I want to be respectful of time. Tal has had his hand up for a long time. I'm going to do Tal, and Erla has had her hand up, but the Zoom isn't working, so Erla will be next, and I'm going to try and hit everyone in the queue as well. Tal, take it away, man.
Okay, that was understandably intense. I wanted to return back to something that, what's the name? Let me scroll up a bit. Abdel Halim said about what's being portrayed to American Jews. And that is mainly the divide between Israelis and diaspora Jews. In Israel, you will see people protesting against the government in the streets of Tel Aviv, albeit sadly, not enough of it is motivated against the genocide in Gaza. A lot of it is like the hostages are not getting back, this war is useless. But then, there has been a massive disinformation campaign to try and drum up support for the war among American Jews. It is very lucky that most American Jews do not support the war. However, what is even more concerning is the interactions that I've had with American Jews in certain contexts. I once talked to Justin about how there was this American Jew who, a colleague of mine, he was like, he was dismissing what I was saying about Bibi funding Hamas for years. And it was very disgusting to me because, first of all, I studied this conflict more than you. I've spent years trying to understand the perspective of my own people as well as the perspective of the Palestinian people. You are being fed a ridiculous narrative, and you read Israel Hayom. No, no, I can't take you seriously. I just left pissed. But the issue at hand, when it comes to the way we're advertised these things in the diaspora, there's this like whole way of trying to drum up support among American Jews. And then, when they meet an Israeli American like me who doesn't fit their narrative, they just completely malfunction. It's like, Tal, why are you talking with people who are protesting on campuses? I'm trying to understand things. If I want peace, you have to do things that you don't like. And it's very strange to me. Because while this campaign is going on towards to target American Jews and to drum up support for Israel, it hasn't really worked that well outside of Jewish institutions. You see a rise in Jewish anti-Zionism in the diaspora, of Jewish non-Zionists. I identify as a non-Zionist for very personal reasons. And I'm very concerned. I think that a lot of it I don't think it leads to peace. I don't think it leads to understanding the Palestinian narrative or the Palestinian people better. And I find myself very concerned of what the consequences of this shift are going to be. Like, okay, we'll spread propaganda that Israel's doing no wrong. We'll spread some lies. But now what's going to happen to the Jewish community? Are we going to become more fragmented? I don't know. It has me worried. And this has less to do with I'm concerned about Israel or Palestine. I'm concerned for the future of my own community in that regard.
Thank you, Tal. I'm gonna let oh, I'm unmuted. I'm gonna let Urla have the floor next. I promised her she would be next, but then Justin had to leave, so he was next. But Urla, take it away.
Okay, yes, thank you. Tal, to respond to you, a lot of right wing, I would say Jewish Americans are getting radicalized. Like you can see that with Batar and even Chabad 770 in Brooklyn when Itamar Ben Gvir came, hosted him, a terrorist. They hosted a terrorist. And then they went out into the streets of Brooklyn, uh, terrorizing, literally chanting, death to Arabs, may your village burn. I don't know why no one, I called the NYPD and I spoke to them and I reported that act months later as terrorism. And the officer I spoke to said, I was the first person that pointed out that that was terrorism, which kind of like blew my mind that there's no, I mean, like, I guess, in um, the Israeli woman, I'm sorry, Aviva, said what our Palestinians can do is just be a little bit more vigilant. Um, these Jewish institutions have things like the JNF or things to protect them legally in America. We need better legal um, people in America to help push our cause. We need more Palestinian diaspora speaking to Palestinians in Palestine about how to bridge our, because we're Western educated now. We're Western educated. We're different than what Palestinians in Palestine are experiencing. So we need to understand and bridge that gap. We need more women. We need more Palestinian women speaking up and being the face of a new Palestinian community of leadership. I think that will also be, because we're being realistic. If we're being realistic, the world does not like an Arab man. They don't want to hear an Arab man talk. And that's horrible. I'm not saying it's good. I'm saying it's just the reality of the situation. People don't want to hear an Arab man speak. So let's give them Palestinian women who are well spoken, who are intelligent. I'm not ready for it. I'm raising children, but no, like, but we need more, I would say, Palestinian women, more Palestinian diaspora to, come forward and really create a political movement that we can then move to overseas. I need more Palestinian diaspora to move overseas, regardless of if it's difficult. The thing I hear from my mother, saying, my grandfather came because life was hard in Palestine, came to America, and they never went back. They came to make money in America and take back to Palestine, and they never went back. So I think a huge thing is for Palestinian diaspora to go back, no matter how difficult it is, because it's going to be difficult. It's not going to be as easy, realistically. And then I wanted to respond to Dawood, who said that Israel is surviving, and that's why they're, gosh, are you saying that Israel is the hungry dog? And if somebody comes next to your food, you're going to attack them? Like, goodness gracious. Like, and the idea, I do believe there won't be a two-state solution. I don't. And I don't agree with it because we're just going to fight. We're just going to throw things over the border. I think we can be Israeli and Palestinians. And when you sit there and speak about, oh, Israel won't make Palestinian citizens, you're just saying Jewish supremacy. Oh, because of a numbers thing. That's excuses for Jewish supremacy. Palestinians should be citizens in the country that they live in. And if you're occupying them, give them citizenship. You're saying, oh, the Druze have an identity and these people, but you're not giving Palestinians the chance to say if they want that identity or not. Maybe some Palestinians do want to be Israeli citizens. Maybe it would just be easier that way to work from the inside and then bring it up that way, and that we can actually have dialogue with each other. If there's a security issue, build more checkpoints. You're already building them. Go ahead and build a couple more and make as Jewish Israelis go through a couple checkpoints. Like, it's just this idea that we're constantly, someone else said it, that as Palestinians we have to explain why we're not violent. We have people occupying Palestinians, so they're justified in not liking or loving their occupier. They're justified in hating their occupier. If you want to create loyalty, give people citizenship, give people equal rights, give them a right to vote, give them a right to be governed in a court of law that doesn't prosecute them and put them in jail 90% of the time. You're not going to create loyalty by subjugating another people and not giving them protection. It's just a weird, it's again, it is Jewish supremacy, and I wish it wasn't, but that's the thing I keep coming back to. The issue of why Palestinians are not free in their own homeland is the argument and the excuse is always a numbers Jewish supremacy thing. And I think more Palestinians, maybe I'm blind in America, maybe they would choose to be Israeli citizens and just be Palestinians in Israel. And maybe you would see a loyalty and people would join the army because that's what they would just do in the country that they live in. Um,
Thank
I
you,
think
Rosa.
I think that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Very powerful points. I want to be respectful of the audience this time because I know you guys also have to ask questions. So we're going to go for 5 more minutes. And everyone who currently has their hand raised, Adam, Jad, Bilal, Tal, since you already went, sorry, I'm not going to call you, and Abdul Halim, I'm gonna give you guys around a minute and a half for closing remarks. Adam, why don't you start us off?
First of all, is that okay if I put down the link to the Discord in case people ever want to continue? We're
Yeah, and
meeting
continue the
there
conversation. Go ahead,
on the
man.
head-on Discord. I just put it in the chat. We have daily conversations between Israelis, Palestinians, Muslims, Jews, Christians, Americans, everybody from around the world. So I think just to kind of bring us back to, I think, where we started from, when we were looking for common ground, we were looking for a shared ancestry, we were looking for a story that everybody can rally behind. And we were, I think, like the beginning momentum was, well, Israelis need to understand, or Jews need to tell other Jews. There was that type of tendency, that type of talk. And then I said that, well, there's an element of fear which makes all of what we said very difficult to do. And then, again, I wasn't justifying, I was mostly just explaining, wasn't articulating my own fear as Justin would like to paint it. No, I'm just describing what the situation on the ground is. I think when you heard from David, I think it was pretty accurate about that. one thing that I appreciate from Justin, not necessarily in this conversation, but in previous conversations, when it's a little bit more one-on-one, and I told him this, I'm like, look, you're just, everything that you and I are speaking about, that's fine. You can persuade me, I can persuade you. But when I go and bring this back to Israelis, I get immediate pushback, which I feel is fear-driven. And he then one time said, so what do you need from me? Which was amazing. Yeah, let's take it there. Let's figure out how you can help me and how I can help you. Because otherwise we're going in circles. I persuade my people, you persuade your people, we're going nowhere. And this is the type of conversation that I found very valuable before. I understand why October 7th happened. I understand all the justification or explanation. I get that, but that doesn't necessarily help me. That understanding isn't yet helping me. It helps me understand you, but for me to actually drive impact in my society, I need more help. And maybe that could be a topic for a future conversation.
Amen. 100%. Bilal, I want you to go next then because Roy's sadly not in the conversation. Maybe you can join the next conversation. But then after Bilal, we'll have Jad and then lastly Abdul Halim. Bilal, take it away, man.
Thanks, Elijah. So yeah, I'm going to just quickly, like I wrote down a bunch of different points as people were talking just to try to like hit on them. So first things first, I'm just going to quickly get this out of the way. Arab identity, what is it? Everybody talk about Arabs as a monolith. It is the furthest thing from a monolith. Arab identity, it's like calling somebody Hispanic. They have similar, they obviously have a common language, but that's really basically about it. It kind of starts to break down from there. So the idea of Arabs being a monolith, it's ridiculous. Try to put a Tunisian and a Saudi in the same room and have them try to talk to each other and tell me how good that works. It does not. It's not possible. So that's the first thing that this Zionist project Israel it basically creates. I think I mentioned this obviously before. It's us versus them. It's creating that other, and so initially, obviously, Zionism was very Eurocentric, and the people that were involved in the creation and the establishment and the settlement in Zionism is relatively Eurocentric. But as it grew, as it had to morph and evolve throughout the years, it began to give more and more rights to certain people that Zionism and the state saw as beneficial, right? It's not giving rights because it wants to give rights. It doesn't give rights to the Bedouins or give rights to the Druze just because they just love the Druze and love the Bedouins. The Bedouins and the Druze, in many cases, were discriminated against just as Palestinians are, if not more in some situations. Even Mizrahi Jews, which are Arab Jews, right, were also discriminated against. Somebody in the comments also mentioned, there was a huge influx of population, a large migration from the Arab countries to Israel. Why? Why did that happen? For a thousand plus years, there was Jewish settlement or Jewish civilization and society all within the Arab world. And in fact, were in most cases safer than those that were in Europe, right? And lived longer and more comfortably than those that were in Europe. And it changed, ding, 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 after Israel was established. Okay, so creating the other, dividing the people throughout the Arab world is part and parcel of Israel's establishment and existence. Finally, I know I don't have too much time. October 7th had to happen because the world only notices when Israelis are killed. Okay, that is part of this asymmetry that happens. When over 200 Palestinians were killed since the ceasefire began in Gaza. That doesn't sound like a ceasefire, does it? Right? Imagine if 200 Israelis were killed during the ceasefire. Just imagine the difference. Right? It's not even, it's an alien concept. Right? There is a complete disarray in terms of how we cherish even Palestinians subconsciously. When we see an Israeli that is killed, right? An Israeli, say an IDF soldier is killed, we attribute more value to that death than when Palestinians are killed because we've also been programmed to dehumanize ourselves. This is real. This is an absolute real thing. And so how does this all change, right? I mean, just get back to the main topic. I don't agree that a two-state solution will happen because a two-state solution does not serve justice. There is loads, hundreds of thousands, millions of Palestinians that live in the refugee camps around the world that should be able to come home. Okay, throughout the land, throughout the historic area of Eretz Israel, Palestine, you name it, names change, the land doesn't. Right. So those people should have the capability of being able to return home, just like any Jews, if they wish to come to Palestine and become Palestinian Jews, or whatever name, Canaan, as we decide, something that does not have so much animosity behind it. Right, that was the kind of idea behind this whole thing. Right, David actually mentioned a good point. He said there's so much baggage behind the Palestinian nationality. There's so much baggage behind the Israeli nationality. That's the whole point of this Canaan thing in the first place. We realize there's a lot of fucking baggage, and we were trying to. So that is a method forward. And so finally, the last thing that I have to say here is that Israel holds the reason why we continue to go back on this and put this on the Israeli public, Israeli society, is because Israel is the one that holds the power. Israel is the modern military, the strongest military in the region. Israel is in every sense of the word has the ball in its side. When Israelis think that there's peace, Palestinians have not seen a day of peace since 1948. Okay, we haven't actually seen a day of peace. We've always been under occupation. So when Israelis say, "Oh, we just need peace," peace can be one-sided. Right? You can see peace, but as long as you don't know what the Palestinians are dealing with, we're still going to, and that's why violence occurs, because it is the last possible thing. When you ignore a people and you just go, it's in the back of my mind. We've put a bunch of fences up, we put a wall up, we put this and that and the other thing. Now we can rest. Now we can have peace. Well, understand that a people that have dignity and that have a value to their lives and care about their children and their well-being, they will find a way to break through that wall. And that's what they did on October 7th. Right. And so that's what's going to happen. That's about as good as it does. So who occupied the West Bank and Gaza from 48 to 67? The Jordanians and the Egyptians were in those territories, but did they actually occupy? Did they actually tell the Palestinians the rules and force them to have checkpoints and go? No, they were just like the British. I mean, it was still very much a military rule, right? But at the same time, it was nothing like what the Israelis do when they're occupying a place. I mean, there's no question. Even so there's that's the type of thing. These are the types of basic kind of like simplicities that are made, to try to make murky the waters. Citizen rights under Jordan didn't give them. I mean, what? So what does that mean exactly? So they gave them citizens' rights under Jordan. And then what happened in '67? The Israelis took over and they took their rights, didn't they? So I mean, again, it's why are you pointing at the Jordanians or the Egyptians when in reality the only people that are actually taking away rights are the Israelis?
I just said that because the Jordanians actually gave them citizenship, which is why it's not the same, right? Because they were given rights to
exactly
participate
yes.
in the country that was controlling them. That's the whole thing that matters here. Doesn't matter what you call it, Jordan, Palestine, Israel, Lebanon. It's about having the same rights. That's why in Lebanon it's such a problem that there's Palestinians that don't have rights. It's a tragedy. Same thing goes in Israel. You have so many people without rights. That's the root of the problem.
Yeah,
Thanks, guys.
So much to both Adams, to Adam in the comment section, Adam virtually. Let's try and stick Abdul Halim and Jad to the minute and a half because we do want to be respectful of the Q&A people. If there's a question in chat, let's leave it towards after Jad and Abdul Halim are done. Jad, a minute and a half, time is yours.
Yeah, well, thank you. Listen, I think it's important that we all understand why it's very difficult for Palestinians to come into conversations like these oftentimes. And I'm somebody who's a very big proponent of dialogue. I love dialogue, even with those who I vehemently disagree with. I've talked to Adam, Palestinian Adam, about this before. Let's even just look at this recent ceasefire deal, if we can call it that. I was somebody who, for the last 2 years, on social media, I didn't just talk about Gaza and the what I believe to be a genocide in Gaza, but I talked a lot about the Israeli hostages, for example, and I was somebody who was really adamant about getting the Israeli hostages returned. It is a war crime. I understand this. And I knew a lot of Israelis who had been saying, we need Palestinians to stand with us, peace for peace for peace. And a lot of them did. A lot of them really were vehement about getting a ceasefire and hostage deal. And what I've seen, unfortunately, is that as soon as the hostages have been released, the Israelis that were our allies have disappeared. They are nowhere to be found. They don't talk about Gaza. They don't talk about the starvation. They haven't talked about the occupation. For them, unfortunately, it's gone back to the status quo. We'll live with the occupation, we'll live with the settler violence. And the Israelis, who I thought perhaps I could gain their trust, they've dropped the ball in my case because they don't talk about Gaza anymore. Or they're more concerned, for example, about talking about what happened on October 7th, which I think is important, but won't talk about what's happening still right now in Gaza. And this is a very, very big mistake. And here, Adam, your comment here. I mean, Adam, but
let's wait for the Q&A to respond to comments.
Okay. Sorry. But I will say this because one of the things I was told was that the Israelis who were marching were doing so also on behalf of Palestinians, right? But the reality was, I think a lot of them were solely concerned about the hostages. And so for me, Palestinians when they feel there's this distrust. And so as somebody who has extended my empathy, especially for Israelis who often don't really like me or frankly a lot of my people very much, I see why this trust is eroded. And I've talked about this time and time again where we're now falling back in my eyes to the Israelis who want to go back to pre-7 status quo. And that is extremely dangerous. And I see no conversations happening. I see some rhetoric, but largely it feels like we're going back to the very beginning of where we were in the beginning of 2023, which had already been the deadliest year for Palestinians in the West Bank prior to October 7th. And I say this as somebody, my father was in prison in Nablus in the 80s. The prison was so brutal, it actually was dismantled by Israel. That's how brutal it was. There were repeated reports, documented reports of torture. My dad was there for simply throwing stones at an Israeli tank that came to take us home. Right? There's no other way to say it. And so I'm happy to have these conversations, but there needs to be a realization of what's happening on the ground, because as I talked about with Adam prior, there is this comfort of going back to what had already been the case, and that is seriously dangerous.
Thank you, Chad. I'm going to give Abdul Halim the last word, and then I'll explain the Q&A format. We'll give 20 minutes for Q&A, by the way. Abdul Halim, floor is yours, man.
Yeah, so I want to just build off what Jed said, and there again, he kind of encapsulated what I had stated when I first opened up the dialogue, was that it's not on us Palestinians for Israelis to see us as human beings. It's not up to and not just that, the Palestinians have no agency to change their circumstances, right? Whether they don't throw a rock, whether they don't use guns to fight the Israelis, it won't change their circumstances, right? But something that I do think can change our circumstances is the Palestinian diaspora playing an integral role in lobbying Congress and being able to sway pro-Israel lawmakers or lawmakers who are otherwise indifferent about Palestine, to get them to see that they need to utilize their leverage over Israel and impose an arms embargo, but not even just impose an arms embargo, impose sanctions. Somebody mentioned the Jewish National Fund. I believe the Biden administration had sanctioned some subsidiaries of the Jewish National Fund, and the aftermath of October 7th. And I think that needs to be our game plan in order to end the occupation, achieve liberation, is really put pressure on lawmakers by identifying who are the institutional abusers of Palestinian human rights. Who are those institutional abusers, and what are those institutions? Is it the World Zionist Organization, which, by the way, a year after the occupation of the West Bank began, Israel established the World Zionist Organization to crowdfund settlement support across the world and build settlements in the West Bank. Is it Ben Gvir? Is it Smotrich? I mean, unless there's a rallying call with an actionable plan that can be implemented, I'm afraid we're to keep having these conversations. And I used to be a believer in a two-state solution, and I think right now, if Israel, and I know I might go over a minute here, just 20 more seconds, if Israel left the West Bank and Gaza entirely in East Jerusalem and created a Palestinian state, I would support it. But here's the thing. There's nearly 1 million illegal Israeli settlers living in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, and now Gaza might be not only annexed but resettled as well. So the only option is for the Israelis to not just give the Palestinian citizenship, but to give the Palestinian citizenship and let them be Palestinian, let them openly identify as Palestinian without fear of reprisal, and to acknowledge and understand and not treat the Palestinian identity or culture as a disease, but as an integral part of what should be a binational state for all of its peoples.
Thank you. Thank you, Abdul Halim. Great last words. And I want to open up the floor for questions now. So the way you'll ask your question, first you'll state who it is to. It could be a specific person in this conversation. It could be to a side. If you want to say this is for the Palestinians, this is for the Israelis, that also works. And if you do a more general to a population question, I will pick on those who haven't got the chance to speak as much today to answer those questions if they raise their hand to answer them. To answer a question, simply raise your hand. But the floor is yours. Roy, I see you've raised your hand since for a long, long time. So if you're still there, I will give you the first question before jumping into the rest of the people. But everyone else, raise your hand if you have a question. Roy, go ahead.
All right, thanks. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Okay, great. There's really a lot I wanted to say, and maybe I'll have the ability to be in a speaking position to actually push back against some arguments and some narratives. But just to focus to a specific question, I think it was Bilal previously spoke about the Mina Jewelry and the fact that the reason that they were pushed out was because of Zionism. I guess my question is, why do you think that is an indictment of Zionism when the Jews that were pushed out of Iraq and Yemen and Tunisia, they were not Zionists. They were citizens. They were subjects of wherever they lived. There was nothing Zionist about them. They were just Jews who were living there. And because of the actions of Jews that were three or four time zones away, they were being dragged through the streets. Their businesses were being burned down. They were being purged out of the military, out of the government. They were being pogromed. If you look at the Farhud and similar instances, why is as a Zionist, these are validations of Zionism. They're not condemnations of Zionism. So I guess why do you see it in that framing?
Great question, and I appreciate the
Well,
question
you first,
actually.
then Adam, if that's okay, because Adam also has his hand raised. So you go first, then Adam. Okay.
Oh, I apologize. Yeah, I was just going to answer Roy there. So it's a very good question, and I'll tell you why. There's two main reasons. First thing is Zionism's use of Judaism as a shield, and attributing Zionism with Judaism in such a way that people that are not involved, or for example, Arab Muslims and Arab Christians that saw the violence that was happening in the 30s in Palestine, and then obviously after the 48 war. Yes, absolutely. There was violence that was targeting Jews that had nothing to do with it. And that I would imagine is a large chunk. I can't guarantee that it's, what percentage of it. But the other major thing that we should also mention is the Zionist infiltration in many of those areas. One of the major ones to know about is the Baghdad bombing, 1953 Baghdad bombing, that the Zionist Israeli Mossad agents were involved in some synagogues in Baghdad in order to drive Jews out of those areas and into Israel. You can also mention the Operation Magic Carpet, which literally stole Yemenite Jewish kids and took them to Israel and basically forced their parents to follow them and their foot. So it's really disgusting. I mean, honestly, I mean, I know that it is easy to recognize, to look at it and say, oh, yeah, no, the Arabs, they just hated the Jews after that, and then they all the Jews left and they went to Israel for safe haven. It's much more complex than that, and it's actually a lot kind of more sinister in many ways. And so that's one thing. The Avalon affair, I think, is another one to look into. So there's quite a few that we can look at.
If I could actually jump in, Adam, before you real quick, because I am a Sephardic Jew. I'm half Sephardic, half Ashkenazi, so this is my own personal history, and it's a history that is actually deeper than what we're talking about. I think the animosity towards Jews in the Muslim and Arab world actually comes from European colonialism, even preceding Zionism in the region, right? The Farhud, we brought up the Farhud, Roy. A lot of Iraqi Jews were co-opted into Nazism because of German occupation and German influence by a German Nazi-aligned government in Iraq, right? That's German influence, right? I am part Syrian Jewish, and in Syria in the 1800s, early 1800s, there was actually a blood libel by the Catholic population of Syria against the local Jewish population. And it was actually the Arab Muslim population that came in on our behalf to save us. And the reason they accused Jews of blood libel is the French priests in Syria basically claimed that the son of a priest who died was killed by a Jew to make matzah. A terrible accusation, but that's European anti-Semitism being infused into the region. And so I think we also need to acknowledge that it's a lot to do with European anti-Semitism, which is foreign to the region, but was infused through European colonialism. And I apologize, Adam, I took your time, but please go ahead.
No, not a problem at all. Just want to add to that, and I don't want to discount anything that anybody has said related to like the Mizrahi Jewish experience. But I think that if we want to start looking at each other's history and acknowledging each other, humanizing, we have to look at both histories. And I'm not going to sit here and act like every single Jewish person that was forced to leave, was exiled, was pushed out or killed from Muslim or Arab countries. I'm not going to sit here and say it's all because of some Zionist operations. It just factually isn't true. And I think we do ourselves a disservice by trying to make it, if we try to make it all of that. You had specific laws in Egypt about absentee property laws, seizing of properties. You had it in Syria. There was some horrible pogroms and the killing of some young Syrian women and girls. Like these things happened. And in as many ways of how we look at like Deir Yassin, right? We are often told in our own Palestinian narrative, they just picked up and left, whether it was because they were actually pushed out or forced out or not. But we didn't just pick up and left. A lot of it was fear of like what happened to Palestinians in Deir Yassin, what happened to Palestinians in Tantura. And I'm seeing a massive parallel of a lot of people's stories, whether they are Mizrahi Jewish, whether they are Palestinian, whether they are Syrians, Muslims today. Like these things may have happened at a certain time period, right? Horrible. We can acknowledge these things. We should accept them and we should own them. But when we continue to do them today is when it's an issue. It's today. It's not 50 years ago. If you have absentee property laws today, that's a today issue. That's not a 50 years ago issue. If you have laws on the books today that say rights determination, self-determination is unique for one type of person or one ethnic group, that's a problem of today, not a problem of 50 years ago. And when we talk about things like dhimmi status in history, how is that framed? As a negative thing, as a horrible thing that should not have ever happened to the Jewish people. The same exact architecture of dhimmi status is how Palestinians are governed today. So if it's wrong then, it's wrong today. Anyway, that's all I want to add.
Very powerfully put, and you're 100% right. And there was also a reactionary Arab nationalist wing that really was also reactionary towards Zionism, but excluded Jews in many respects from that national project. And I think that's also needed to be discussed in this conversation. And I want to move to another question. We have 10 more minutes. Does anyone else have a question? Roy, I'm happy to call on you for another question, but I want to give other people the chance. If you are a participant, you are. Yeah, go ahead.
Just a final thing, because I would love to do a back and forth, but I don't think this is the format for it in the Q&A. Sure. I would love to get into like a factual historical conversation about narratives and their historical accuracy. I will say that I reject the argument of Mossad attacks in Iraq. We can get into that for like a more rigorous thing, but I will just say that Jews registered to leave Iraq, and 90% of Iraqi Jewry registered to leave Iraq before the first attack that was suspected to be Mossad, and it's a very shaky allegation. But even if we accept it, and the argument is that it's nonsensical because 90% of Iraqi Jewry already signed up to leave Iraq before the first one happened. So I very much, and I would love to do this on a larger scope on generally Zionism and people's understanding of it throughout history, but I don't think the Q&A is the forum for it.
Your numerical assessment is correct. 90% did leave primarily in response to the Farhud. And then we can get into a conversation, like you said, is that a response to European anti-Semitism being infused within Iraq and that being the impetus to change the local population against the Jews? But I want to also open up the floor. Are there any other questions in the chat? Janine, I've seen you've been asking a lot of questions in the written chat. So I want to see if you want to chime in and offer a question to anyone that's still here. If
Yeah,
not,
hey, thank you.
go ahead.
I'm new to this forum, so I really appreciate this.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I literally can't wrap my head around the fact that Israelis don't know what's going on in the West Bank, which makes me think they really don't know what's going on in Gaza either. So how does one amplify the reality of this? And then I guess my question would be, and if it were amplified and if they did know, would they care? And that's shocking to me. I can't even imagine this going on in New Jersey. I'm in New York, and I'm not caring. So if anybody can chime in on that, I'd love to hear.
Pass that on to one of our Israeli participants. If you want to raise your hand, if you're Israeli, to answer, please do, and then I'll call on you. If not, I will call on one of you. Yeah, Adam, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Happy to do it unless somebody else wants to jump in. So I think that they're not aware of it because, well, first of all, I think the Israeli media is doing a really bad job broadcasting these types of things. In general, the entire settlement project is not one that is top of mind for Israelis. That's because there's other things that they're thinking about. The hostages was the primary thing. Cost of living is another thing. Palestinian violence is another thing, however sporadic it is by comparison. Those are the things that they tend to focus on. Would they, if they were to be told about it, would it make a difference? No. Because if you just have a thought that goes into their brain and somehow it will destabilize their entire worldview, they will find all of the cognitive infrastructure to resist that thought. So that isn't the way to actually reach them. We have to understand where they're coming from, whether justified or not, and meet them where they are. So yeah, exposing them to that information will do absolutely nothing.
Thank you so much, Adam. Kat, do you have a question?
Yeah, I think what's coming up for me, listening to everyone's amazing testimony, is this idea of holding space for each other's pain. I think that we are siblings in a way. We're distant cousins. And so there tends to be a lot of like sibling rivalry bickering happening. It feels like that to me. I think my question is more macro. How would things transform if we spent more time really having true empathy and holding more space for each other's pain? Rather than having a knee-jerk reaction of, well, this happened because of the Zionists or this happened because of this. And we actually took a moment to say, I'm so sorry that happened to your ancestors. I'm so sorry that your family is going through this challenge right now. Full stop. I think that I just want to come back to the topic of today. How do we unite? And Elijah, I want to pose this question to you.
Thank you. Yeah.
I noticed today that there was a lot of use of the term side, the Israeli side and the Palestinian side. And I want to know why you're using that language in a forum about uniting each other.
That's a great question. That's a very good question. And it's very hypocritical of me to use that language because my whole impetus is saying that Jews and Palestinians are one family. We're not inherent enemies. There's not two sides. We are one family. We should unite. So you're right. I should not be using that terminology. And in fact, it's probably because I don't have another language to articulate the Israelis and the Palestinians in a more proper moderation form than trying to appear unbiased as I was. But you're completely right. I truly believe the path forward is uplifting what unites us, right? That can be cultural, it can be historical, it can be religious, it can be all of the above, right? But I think the path forward is what you articulated, emphasizing we are one family. And by doing that, you humanize the other. You learn we're not enemies, we're not others, we're brothers and sisters, we are one family. I don't want to hurt my brother, I don't want to hurt my sister. I want to unite with them. And I want to create a future where we're all full and equal participants together, right? We are one family. And so I guess that is the path forward. What we're doing right now, understanding our commonalities as one family, as you said, cousins, right? I think that is the path forward. And through grassroots forums like this, having these conversations, that is what we can do to change the top-down reality that is currently inflicting oppression upon our Palestinian brothers and sisters. And so that, to me, is what we can do at the individual level. So thank you so much. And your question is completely correct, right? And I will definitely improve going forward and use more proper terminology. But I also want to allow Adam to also respond to this because I see as you have your hand up, Adam. Go ahead.
Yeah, quickly add to that. I agree. I think we, as both peoples, have inherited this nationalistic mentality. We've inherited it not to be about, all of us. It's you're either on this side or that side, ethnically. And that's been a huge disservice to us, and we're doing that up to this day to our downfall on both sides. And I think one thing we need to constantly, as Israelis and Jewish people and Palestinians and Arabs, need to ask ourselves is what can we do differently on our side? And so I would pose that question to anybody, no matter what side you're on, but what can we do differently? And what I see as someone who's constantly trying to look at a reasonable solutions, realistic solutions, is I see a group like Standing Together Movement doing some amazing things, right? It's an actual movement taking Israelis and Palestinians together. Now, I know these are a lot of Palestinian Israelis who sit in. There's some privilege there, not unlike my privilege being an American citizen. Utilize that privilege and unite with them. They're people on the ground. You know what I see from the Palestinian side, and I am a big person that criticizes what my side can do. I see them on the BDS list, as if we have the luxury to pick and choose our allies these days. We don't, and these are people that are standing in the street that will say occupation, that will say apartheid, that it needs to end even after this ceasefire took place. And yet we still see the majority of the Palestinian populace not engaging with them, not seeing them as true allies. So there is so much that can be done on both sides to humanize, to accept each other. And instead of it being Israeli, Palestinian, no, you have that identity, so you're really not one of us. It's creating a new identity of those who are not extreme. And I'm tired of being on my side, having to approve or defend anything and everything that's done by any member of my side, as if that's just a blanket responsibility. Because I'm Palestinian, whether it's Hamas, I have to defend it. Whether it's a Zionist and Palestinian, I have to defend it. No, everything is nuanced, and it shouldn't be based on my identity first. It should be about cumulative development, cumulative growth and prosperity and peace. That's it.
That's a great note to end on, Adam. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone to coming to the first Atidna times head-on conversation. Actually, Adam, I saw you have your hand up. If you can make it quick, I will give you the last word, actually.
I'll make it very, very quick. I wanted to thank what Adam just said. I think it's right on the money. I think that one thing that I often feel is that when you have societies that are so polarized, it's almost like by validating any of the other's narrative, you're immediately dismantling your own. And it doesn't need to be this way. Right? Like you can look at the Israeli story. Israelis understand their own story very, very well. And I'm sure that it's right in the way that it's in their mind. That's fine. That doesn't take away anything from the Palestinian story. And I think that I even hear voices here among the Palestinian side that are able to understand where Israelis are coming from and their narrative without it feeling like it's taking away from their own. The more we can have such a capacious kind of understanding of both narratives, we can put both of those in our brain at the same time. I think we'll be able to make progress.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Adam. And I apologize, everyone, that is time. Roy, I know you wanted to chime in, so let's continue this offline. Maybe we can get you involved in the next conversation. I want to leave it there. I want to be respectful of everyone's evening. For those of you in the Holy Land, I know it's early morning for you, so if you're from there, thank you so much for joining us. But this is our first conversation. You all did amazing. And I think many productive aspects came out of this conversation and are reflecting paths for unity, for reconciliation, for mutual understanding, for growth, and for liberation for both peoples from the river to the sea. So thank you all so much. You guys did amazing. And hopefully you'll be back. If you want to join a conversation, reach out to me and I'll try and get you involved in the next one. Okay? Thank you all. Have a good evening. Bye. Peace. Thanks, everyone.